A Pocket Full of Stars. Chapter 1. The Night of Discovery. The night was calm on the Irish coast, and the sound of the waves moved gently across the shore. The sky was wide and full of stars, each shining with quiet light, and the air carried the smell of salt and seaweed. Thomas O'Connor, an 11-year-old boy, walked along the sand with bare feet, his mind restless and curious. He often wandered at night, searching for small treasures washed up by the tide. He was a child of simple life, living in a small village where days were filled with chores and evenings with stories told by elders. Yet Thomas carried inside him a hunger for something more, something that would break the silence of ordinary days. His heart was young, but it was already filled with questions about the world and about the meaning of the stars above him. As he walked, his eyes caught a faint glow in the sand. At first he thought it was a shell reflecting the moonlight, but when he bent down, he saw a small pouch, worn and dusty, lying half buried near the water's edge. He picked it up carefully, and when he opened it, he gasped. Inside the pouch were tiny stars, each glowing softly as if alive. They were not stones, nor fireflies, nor anything he had ever seen before. They shimmered with gentle light, and as he held them, he felt warmth spread through his hands. The stars seemed to whisper, not in words but in feelings, promising the chance to grant small wishes. Thomas stood frozen, his heart racing, for he knew this was no ordinary discovery. It was something magical, something that belonged to the mysteries of the night. Thomas was a boy who often dreamed of helping others. He thought of his family, of his sister who had been ill, and of the villagers who struggled with hard work and little joy. He wondered if the stars could bring them comfort. Yet he also felt fear, for he did not understand the power he now held. He looked around the empty shore, the waves moving endlessly, and he realized that the ocean had given him a gift. The pouch was heavy with light, and each star seemed to wait for him to decide its fate. He felt both wonder and responsibility, knowing that even small wishes could change lives. The night of discovery became a turning point, for Thomas understood that his journey had begun. The stars glowed brighter as he held them close, and Thomas felt that they were alive with memory. He imagined that they had fallen from the sky, carried by the tide to his hands. He thought of the stories told by the old watchmaker Mr. Flynn, who often spoke of secrets hidden in the world, secrets that only the brave could find. Thomas realized that he had stumbled upon one of those secrets, and he felt both proud and humbled. He knew that he could not tell everyone, for such a gift might bring greed and danger. Instead, he decided to keep the pouch hidden, to guard it until he understood its meaning. The stars whispered again, and Thomas felt that they were waiting for him to listen. Thomas O'Connor lived in a small village by the Irish coast. One night he found a strange pouch in the sand, full of tiny stars. Each star glowed softly and whispered about the chance to grant a small wish. The discovery filled him with wonder and fear, teaching him that even the smallest treasures could carry great power. The night became his secret, and the stars became his companions, guiding him toward a future he could not yet imagine. The lesson of that night was clear. Sometimes the greatest journeys begin with a single step, and sometimes the smallest lights carry the strongest truths. Chapter 2. The First Wish. The night after Thomas found the pouch of stars, he lay awake in his small room, staring at the faint glow that came from the corner where he had hidden it. His heart was restless, filled with both excitement and fear. He was only 11, Yet he understood that what he had discovered was not ordinary. The stars inside the pouch seemed alive, each shining softly as if waiting for him to decide their fate. He thought of many things he could wish for, but one thought returned again and again. His sister, Mary, had been sick for months, her laughter gone, her face pale and tired. Thomas remembered how she used to smile at him when they played by the shore, and he longed to see that smile again. He held one of the glowing stars in his hand, feeling its warmth spread through his fingers, and he whispered his wish. The star shimmered brighter for a moment, then faded into nothing, leaving only silence. Thomas felt a strange emptiness, as if the star had given all of itself to his wish. He wondered if anything had truly happened, or if he had only imagined the power. He placed the pouch back in its hiding place and tried to sleep, though his mind was filled with questions. The morning came slowly, and Thomas rose with heavy steps, unsure of what he would find. When he entered the small kitchen, he saw his sister sitting at the table. Her face was still pale, but her eyes carried a light he had not seen in months. She looked at him, and then, without warning, she laughed. It was a soft laugh, fragile but real, and it filled the room with warmth. Thomas froze, his heart racing, for he knew the star had answered his wish. The sound of her laughter stayed with him all day. He followed her around the house, watching her smile, listening to her voice, and feeling joy rise inside him. He realized that the stars were not only beautiful but powerful. They could change lives, even with the smallest wish. Yet he also understood that each star disappeared after granting its gift. The pouch was not endless, and every wish carried a cost. He thought of the many things he could ask for, but he remembered the emptiness he had felt when the star vanished. It was as if the stars gave themselves completely, leaving nothing behind. Thomas felt both wonder and responsibility, knowing that he could not waste them. That evening, Thomas sat alone by the shore, holding the pouch close. He thought of his sister's laughter and how it had returned because of the star. He felt grateful, but he also felt the weight of choice pressing on him. He was only a boy, yet he carried something greater than himself. He realized that the stars were not toys or simple treasures. They were gifts that demanded honesty and care. He promised himself that he would use them wisely, not for greed or selfish desires, but for moments that truly mattered. The ocean waves moved gently beside him, and he felt that the world had grown larger, filled with mystery and possibility. Thomas wished for his sick sister to smile again. The star vanished, and the next morning she laughed for the first time in months. Thomas understood that the stars had power, but each disappeared after granting a wish. The first wish became his lesson, teaching him that magic was not endless and that every gift carried responsibility. He realized that the stars were not only about changing the world but about changing the heart, and he knew that his journey had only begun. Chapter 3. The Secret of the Watchmaker. The small village by the coast was quiet, but inside the workshop of Mr. Flynn there was always a soft ticking sound. The old watchmaker had lived there for many years, and his hands were known for their skill in repairing clocks and pocket watches. His shop smelled of oil and wood, and the shelves were filled with tools that seemed older than the man himself. Mr. Flynn was not only a craftsman but also a keeper of stories. His eyes were sharp, and his voice carried the weight of someone who had seen more than he ever spoke about. When Thomas O'Connor and Alice Moore came to him with the pouch of stars, he looked at them with a calm expression, as if he had been waiting for this moment. Thomas was nervous, holding the pouch close to his chest. He was only 11, but he already understood that the stars were powerful. Alice, who was 13, stood beside him with curiosity burning in her eyes. She dreamed of freedom and travel, and the stars seemed to her like a key to the world she longed to see. Mr. Flynn listened quietly as Thomas explained how one of the stars had granted his wish and made his sister smile again. The old watchmaker nodded slowly, his face serious, and then he told them the truth. The stars were part of an ancient gift, a treasure that had been passed through time. They were not ordinary lights but fragments of destiny, each carrying the power to change a life. Mr. Flynn explained that the stars could grant wishes, but every wish carried consequences. He told them that the stars were not meant to be used carelessly, because each one disappeared after fulfilling its purpose. He warned them that greed was the greatest danger. If someone used the stars for selfish gain, the gift would turn into a curse. The stars were meant to teach lessons, not to give endless comfort. He spoke with a voice that was calm but firm, and the children felt the weight of his words. Thomas realized that his discovery was not only magical but also dangerous. Alice understood that her dreams of travel could not be fulfilled by stars alone, because the stars demanded honesty and sacrifice. The workshop grew quiet as Mr. Flynn continued. He told them that long ago, the stars had been given to people as a reminder that wishes were powerful but fragile. They could change destiny, but they could also break it. The stars were a gift from the sky, but they were also a test of the heart. Mr. Flynn looked at Thomas and Alice with steady eyes, and they felt that he was not only warning them but also trusting them. He believed that they could carry the responsibility, but he wanted them to understand the danger. The ticking of the clocks around them seemed to echo his words, reminding them that time was always moving, and choices could not be undone. Old Mr. Flynn told the children that the stars were part of an ancient gift. They could change destiny, but every wish carried consequences. He warned them not to use the stars for greed. His lesson became clear to Thomas and Alice. The stars were not only about magic but about truth. They were a mirror of the heart, showing whether a person was ready to use them with courage and honesty. The secret of the watchmaker was not only about the stars but about life itself, teaching them that every choice mattered and that true strength came from wisdom, not desire. Chapter 4. The Trial of Friendship. The evening sky stretched wide above the coast, and the sound of the waves carried a calm rhythm that seemed to invite reflection. Alice Moore sat beside Thomas O'Connor, her eyes fixed on the pouch of stars that glowed faintly in his hands. She was 13, older than Thomas, and her heart was restless with dreams of freedom. She often spoke of leaving the small village, of seeing distant lands, and of sailing across oceans to places she had only read about. Her spirit was bold, and she longed for adventure, but she also carried impatience, believing that life was too short to wait for opportunities. When she looked at the stars inside the pouch, she felt that they were the answer to her longing. Alice reached for one of the stars, holding it carefully in her palm. It was warm and alive, shining with a light that seemed to pulse with possibility. She closed her eyes and asked the star to show her the world beyond the village. The glow grew brighter, and suddenly she saw a vision. It was not a dream but a clear image, as if the star had opened a window to her future. She saw herself standing on the deck of a ship, the wind in her hair, the sea stretching endlessly before her. She saw cities filled with color, markets alive with voices, and landscapes that were far from the quiet coast of Ireland. The vision filled her with joy, and for a moment she believed that her wish had already come true. But as quickly as the vision appeared, it faded. The star in her hand flickered once and then vanished, leaving only emptiness. Alice opened her eyes and felt a deep silence inside her. She realized that the star had given her a glimpse of what could be, but it had not carried her there. The magic had shown her the path, but it had not walked it for her. She understood that dreams needed effort, not only magic. The vision was a promise, but it was also a challenge. If she wanted to see the world, she would have to find the strength to make it happen herself. The star had disappeared, reminding her that its gift was not endless. Thomas watched her quietly, his 11-year-old heart filled with both admiration and concern. He knew how much Alice longed for freedom, and he saw how the vision had touched her. Yet he also understood the warning. The stars were powerful, but they demanded honesty and responsibility. He remembered the words of Mr. Flynn, the old watchmaker, who had told them that every wish carried consequences. Thomas realized that Alice's trial was not about seeing the world but about learning that magic could not replace courage. He felt that their friendship was being tested, because the stars were not only his secret but also hers now. They would have to face the lessons together, even if those lessons were difficult. Alice sat in silence, thinking about what she had seen. She felt both hope and disappointment, for the vision had shown her what she wanted most, but it had also reminded her that she could not rely only on magic. She looked at Thomas and understood that the stars were not toys to be used without thought. They were guides, showing the truth of the heart. Her trial had taught her that friendship meant sharing not only joy but also responsibility. She realized that Thomas had trusted her with the stars, and she had to honor that trust by using them wisely. The trial of friendship became her lesson, teaching her that dreams were possible, but they required effort, courage, and honesty. Alice asked a star to show her the world beyond the village. She saw a vision of her future, traveling across the seas. But the star vanished, and Alice realized that dreams needed effort, not only magic. The trial of friendship reminded both children that the stars were not about escaping reality but about facing it with strength. They understood that magic could open doors, but only their choices could carry them through. The lesson of that night was clear. Friendship was not only about sharing dreams but also about sharing the responsibility to make them real. Chapter 5. The Shadow of Wishes. The nights on the coast grew heavier with each wish that Thomas and Alice made. The stars inside the pouch still glowed, but their light seemed weaker, as if the world itself was losing brightness. The air felt colder, and the silence of the village became deeper, broken only by the sound of the waves. Thomas noticed that the shadows around him stretched longer than before, even when the moon was high. Alice felt the same unease, her heart restless as she looked at the pouch. They both realized that something was changing, something that was not part of the gift but part of the consequence. It was then that the shadow of wishes appeared. At first it was only a faint shape, moving at the edge of their vision, but soon it grew clearer. It was not a person, nor an animal, but a creature made of darkness itself. Its form shifted like smoke, and its eyes glowed faintly, reflecting the fading light of the stars. The shadow did not speak, but its presence was heavy, pressing against their hearts. It followed Thomas and Alice wherever they went, waiting silently, watching with hunger. They understood that it was feeding on the stars, growing stronger each time one disappeared. The shadow was not only a creature of darkness but also a reminder that wishes carried a price. Thomas felt fear rise inside him, but he also felt responsibility. He was only 11, yet he carried the pouch that the shadow desired. He thought of his sister's smile, of Alice's vision of the world, and of the lessons Mr. Flynn had given them. He realized that the shadow was not simply chasing them. It was waiting for them to use all the stars, to empty the pouch, so that it could claim the last of their hope. Alice felt the same, her 13-year-old heart torn between her dreams and the danger before them. She had always longed for freedom, but now she understood that freedom was not only about travel. It was about facing the truth, even when it was frightening. The shadow grew stronger with each passing day. The sky seemed darker, the nights longer, and the air heavier. The villagers noticed the change, though they did not understand it. Thomas and Alice knew the truth, but they kept it hidden, afraid that others would fall into greed if they learned about the stars. They carried the pouch carefully, guarding it from the shadow, but they also felt the weight of choice pressing against them. Each star was a gift, but each wish brought the shadow closer. They realized that their journey was no longer only about magic. It was about courage, honesty, and the strength to resist temptation. With every wish, the world grew darker. A shadow appeared, a creature feeding on the fading stars. It followed Thomas and Alice, waiting for them to use all the stars. The shadow of wishes became their trial, teaching them that magic was never free and that every gift carried responsibility. They understood that the stars were not only about changing destiny but also about facing the darkness that came with desire. The lesson of the shadow was clear. Wishes could bring light, but they could also awaken shadows, and only those who carried honesty in their hearts could hope to overcome them. Chapter 6. Loss and Choice. The day had been heavy with clouds, and the sea carried a restless rhythm that seemed to echo the unease in Thomas's heart. He was only 11, but the weight of the pouch of stars made him feel older, as if he carried not only light but also the fate of those around him. When danger struck one of his friends, Thomas did not hesitate. He reached into the pouch and held a star, whispering his wish with trembling hands. The glow spread quickly, wrapping his friend in safety, and the danger passed as if erased by the light. Relief filled Thomas, but when he looked back into the pouch, his joy turned to fear. The stars were almost gone. What had once been a pocket full of shining fragments of destiny was now nearly empty, and the fading glow reminded him that every gift carried a cost. Alice Moore stood beside him, her 13-year-old eyes sharp with awareness. She had always dreamed of freedom, of traveling beyond the narrow borders of their village, but now her dreams were shadowed by something darker. She noticed that the shadow of wishes had grown stronger. It lingered near them, its shape heavier, its presence colder. Each time a star vanished, the shadow seemed to feed, stretching taller, its eyes glowing with hunger. Alice felt fear rise inside her, but she also felt determination. She understood that the stars were not endless, and that their choices would decide not only their own fate but the fate of everyone touched by the shadow. Thomas sat quietly, holding the pouch close, his mind filled with questions. He thought of his sister's smile, of Alice's vision of the world, and of the friend he had just saved. Each wish had brought light, but each had also brought loss. He realized that the stars were not meant to be used without thought. They were lessons, demanding honesty and courage. He felt torn between the desire to protect those he loved and the fear of feeding the shadow further. His young heart carried the burden of choice, and he knew that the next wish could change everything. Alice placed her hand gently on the pouch, her voice steady though her heart was restless. She reminded Thomas that the stars were not only his secret but theirs together. She understood that friendship meant sharing responsibility, even when the choices were painful. She thought of her dreams of travel, of seeing distant lands, and she realized that the stars could not carry her there. They could only show her the truth. The shadow was waiting for them to act without wisdom, to waste the last of the stars, and she knew they could not allow that. She felt that their trial was not only about magic but about courage, and that the final stars had to be used with care. Thomas used a star to save a friend from danger, but then he saw the pocket almost empty. Alice noticed the shadow growing stronger. They understood they had to decide how to use the last stars. The lesson of loss and choice became clear to them both. Magic could bring light, but it could also awaken darkness. The stars were not endless, and their power demanded honesty. They realized that their journey was not about collecting wishes but about learning how to face the truth. The choice before them was heavy, but it was also the path to strength. They knew that the last stars would decide not only their fate but the fate of the shadow itself. Chapter 7. The Last Star. The night was heavy with silence, and the sea moved with slow rhythm, as if it was waiting. Thomas O'Connor held the pouch close to his chest, his small hands trembling as he looked inside. Only one star remained. It glowed faintly, weaker than the others had before, but its light was steady, as if it carried the weight of all the wishes that had already been made. Thomas was only 11, yet he felt older in that moment, burdened by choices that seemed far greater than his years. He thought of himself, of the dreams he carried in his heart, of the things he wanted but had never spoken aloud. For a moment, he wanted to use the last star for his own wish, to bring comfort to his life, to make his path easier. The temptation was strong, and the shadow of wishes lingered nearby, its dark form pressing against him, whispering silently for him to give in. Alice Moore stood beside him, her 13-year-old eyes filled with both fear and hope. She had always dreamed of freedom, of traveling beyond the village, but now she understood that the last star was not about her dreams. It was about survival, about facing the darkness that had grown stronger with every wish. She watched Thomas carefully, knowing that the choice was his, but also knowing that their friendship had carried them this far together. She trusted him, even as the shadow stretched taller, its eyes glowing with hunger, waiting for the final star to vanish. Alice felt her heart race, but she remained steady, reminding herself that courage was not about escaping fear but about standing inside it. Thomas remembered the words of Mr. Flynn, the old watchmaker, who had told them that the stars were part of an ancient gift, powerful but dangerous. He remembered the warning that greed would turn the gift into a curse. His mind returned to the laughter of his sister, the vision Alice had seen of the world, and the friend he had saved. Each wish had brought light, but each had also carried a cost. He realized that the last star was not meant for him alone. It was meant to decide the fate of the shadow, the creature that had followed them, feeding on their choices. Thomas felt the weight of responsibility pressing against his young heart, and he knew that the final wish had to be made not for himself but for everyone. He held the star tightly, its glow warming his hand, and he whispered his wish. He wished for the shadow to disappear forever. The star flared with sudden brightness, stronger than any light he had seen before. It rose from his hand, shining like a small sun, and the darkness around them trembled. The shadow of wishes stretched and twisted, its form breaking apart as the light pierced through it. The hunger in its eyes faded, replaced by silence, and then it dissolved completely, vanishing into nothing. The air grew lighter, the sky clearer, and the sea calmer, as if the world itself had been freed from a heavy weight. Only one star remained. Thomas wanted to wish for himself, but he remembered Mr. Flynn's words. Instead, he wished for the shadow to disappear forever. The light of the star broke the darkness, and the shadow dissolved. The last star became not only a gift but a lesson, teaching Thomas and Alice that true strength was not in taking for oneself but in giving for others. They realized that courage was born from sacrifice and that honesty was stronger than desire. The final wish carried them beyond fear, showing them that even the smallest light could defeat the greatest shadow. Chapter 8. Resolution. The dawn came slowly over the Atlantic coast, painting the sky with soft colors of gold and pale blue. The sea was calm now, its waves gentle, as if the world itself had taken a deep breath after a long struggle. Thomas O'Connor stood on the shore, the empty pouch in his hands. He was only 11, but his face carried a new strength, a quiet courage that had not been there before. The stars were gone, each one used, each one vanished after giving its gift. Yet Thomas did not feel loss. He understood that the true power of the stars had never been in their magic alone. It had been in the lessons they gave, in the way they had forced him to face choices, to carry responsibility, and to grow beyond fear. He realized that bravery was not about having endless wishes but about standing strong when the wishes were gone. Alice Moore stood beside him, her eyes fixed on the horizon. She was 13, and her heart had always longed for freedom, for travel, for the wide world beyond the village. The stars had shown her visions, had given her glimpses of what could be, but they had also taught her that dreams required effort. She felt more determined now, her spirit sharper, her courage stronger. She knew that she would one day leave the coast, not because of magic but because of her own will. The stars had not carried her across the seas, but they had given her the strength to believe in herself. She realized that freedom was not a gift to be handed to her. It was something she had to earn, step by step, with honesty and courage. The old watchmaker, Mr. Flynn, watched them from a distance, his eyes calm and steady. He had known from the beginning that the stars were not endless treasures but lessons wrapped in light. He saw in Thomas and Alice the change that the stars had brought. They were no longer children searching for easy answers. They were young souls who had faced darkness and chosen truth. Mr. Flynn understood that the stars had fulfilled their purpose, not by granting endless wishes but by shaping hearts that could carry light into the future. He felt pride, knowing that the gift had been used wisely, and that the shadow of wishes had been defeated not by greed but by sacrifice. Thomas and Alice walked away from the shore together, their steps steady, their hearts lighter than before. The pouch was empty, but the sky above them was full of real stars, shining with endless light. They understood that those stars would always be there, guiding them, reminding them of the lessons they had learned. They no longer needed magic to believe in themselves. They carried courage in their hearts, and that was stronger than any wish. The coast had been the place of discovery, of trial, and of resolution, but now it was time to move forward. They left knowing that the true strength of wishes was not in magic but in honesty and courage of the heart. The pocket was empty, but Thomas and Alice realized that the true power of the stars was not in magic but in the lessons they gave. Thomas became braver, Alice more determined. They left the coast knowing that real stars would always shine above them. Moral: the true strength of wishes is not in magic but in honesty and courage of the heart. Only those who are ready to sacrifice for others can defeat darkness and find light. Thank you for your attention. If you like the story, please like and subscribe. It motivates us to make new videos and helps us promote the channel. Thank you.